Okay, moving on to the team that I have finishing in second in the Big 12 for this upcoming season. That would be Bob Huggins and his West Virginia Mountaineers. And I think this could be a surprise to a lot of people. But to me, low-key, this is a top 10 team. Last year, West Virginia slipped down the stretch after a really good start. And I feel like 2019 kind of marked Bob Huggins' most recent rebirth. This is a guy that formerly inserted Press Virginia into his defensive system, and he would press the whole game. But last year, it kind of changed for West Virginia because instead of that full court pressing identity, they tuned out to more of a compact defensive approach. And this was the third best defense in the nation last year, but they do lose one of the better defenders on the team in Jermaine Haley. He was like a glue guy, interesting player, had good point guard skills, but could not really shoot the ball. He had good size, but didn't really do much besides that. And he's gone, but you do bring back the twin towers of college basketball in Oscar Tshiebwe and Derek Culver. And I think these are two guys that are just absolutely going to own the glass for this West Virginia team. They also bring back Miles Deuce McBride, and I think this season is going to be a season for him where he breaks out. And at times last year, he was really the primary creator for West Virginia, which was for the better and for the worse. And this guy was super impressive for the most part last year. Just for the fact that this guy was an unranked 3-star freshman, and I do think he's in a really good position to break out. He was an unranked 3-star freshman and really was, as I said, West Virginia's most consistent shot creator last year, and I think playing this season with that experience under his belt, he's only going to get better and better. There's also so much other depth on the wing with this West Virginia team. Emmett Matthews is back. So is Sean McNeil and Taz Sherman, who are now going to be in their second year with the program. They also bring back Jordan McCabe, who's a flashy point guard. He was their starting point guard last year. And you have Kedrian Johnson, the JUCO transfer, who may just be in position to take the starting job from McCabe. That's how good this kid from JUCO is, Kedrian Johnson. They also bring in a top 100 freshman off the bench in Jalen Bridges. And this is a deep roster, even for West Virginia standards. And I like that it fits the exact mold that they want to play with. They have the length, they have the toughness, and they have the defense. And very quickly, Bob Huggins has turned this program around from guys that he doesn't have anymore, like Javon Carter, like Daxter Miles, like Nathan Adrian. All of a sudden, those guys are gone, and after only one bad season, Bob Huggins still has this West Virginia program in a really good position to succeed. There's good versatility on this West Virginia team, and their offense should get better as their creators, I think, get older and more experienced. I think that is the easy argument for this West Virginia team, that they're just going to blow people away on the offensive glass. And I do know Baylor did do a really good job last year at gang rebounding, but thinking of those Baylor centers having to go up against an Oscar Tshiebwe and a Derek Culver, or even having those guys at West Virginia having to go up against like a Marco Santos Silva at TCU, that's going to be really tough for them. And West Virginia has a lot of guard depth, but all of those guards are simply going to serve as a support system for that front line that West Virginia has. And if I'm Bob Huggins, I'm being honest here, I think I'm really just building my team and my game plan around. Bob Huggins had a very funny quote from earlier in the offseason that was, "Screw this whole NBA pace and space movement, we're going to play rugby." And last year, West Virginia was almost stubborn with how much they pounded the rock inside and unleashed Tshiebwe and Culver on the offensive glass. They did it with no restraint. And Huggins could give, he doesn't care about style points. As long as his bully ball produces a somewhat efficient scoring rate and wins West Virginia games, Bob Huggins knows that his opponents aren't scoring on his front line on the other end of the ball. Like, this kid Oscar Tshiebwe, I'm telling you, is molded from stone. And West Virginia last year, by the way, they did feel a little fraud to me because they played in ugly games, and I get it. Sometimes that does make you a little hard to buy into them. But at the same time, I think we have to forget we have to realize, what the expectations were for West Virginia last year. 2 years ago, this was the worst West Virginia team I've ever seen under Bob Huggins. They were lifeless. And then all of a sudden in the Big 12 tournament, if you remember, they pulled an upset over an Oklahoma team that made the NCAA tournament. That West Virginia team was awful. They finished last place in the Big 12. They beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 tournament, and they turned that momentum into a pretty solid season last year. And betting on Bob Huggins for me is always something that I like to do. He's a coach that I think his teams just get better and better and better as times go on, as they have more experience in the program. And to me, I do think that's what's going to happen with this West Virginia team, because they know what their identity is. They know what their strength is in their two big men, and Sheboy and Culver. And West Virginia, if Miles McBride could turn into an elite scorer, I think they could be really good. I think in terms of this year's team, a McBride breakout obviously helps, and Kadrian Johnson is more suited for the job at starting point guard, and I think having him into the equation really raises their ceiling. Johnson is a guy who arrives in Morgantown as the 3rd overall JUCO prospect according to JUCOrecruiting.com, and this is a kid last year. I get it, albeit in JUCO, he really stuffed the stat sheet. 26 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, and 3 steals per game. He is critical to this West Virginia team. And one other point I wanted to bring up here with the Mountaineers. I feel like sometimes we tend to underrate jumps and improvements from guys who are already good. It would be easy to say after Oscar Sheboy averaged 11 and 9 as a freshman, it would be easy to say that's just who he is. But to be honest, I could see those numbers improving even more this season, because last year, the 11 and 9 he put up was in only 23 minutes per game, and he is still developing many other parts of his game, especially offensively. Not only does he have the body, but I do believe this kid was a top 20 recruit for a reason more than his body, and I think he's just going to get better and better and better. West Virginia last year was super aggressive on the glass, and Oscar played in 23 minutes per game last year and averaged 9 rebounds a game. That's just ridiculous. Derek Culver in 25 minutes, almost said Jared Culver, wrong Big 12 player, averaged 8.6 rebounds per game last year, and him and Sheboy are two guys that are two of the best rebounders in the country, and I really think they're only going to get better and better. They play mostly apart, but they do start together, and when they're both on the floor at the same time, that's going to be a tough matchup for many teams. Despite the numbers saying it, I don't think West Virginia was a top 10 team last year, like Ken Pom said, and they started undefeated without really playing anyone. I think that could have had something to do with it. I think they did beat enough decent teams for those numbers to kind of get disguised. Last year, they beat URI, but lost to St. John's, which was bad. They beat Ohio State when they were playing bad and didn't really have that signature win in conference play until very late in the season against Baylor. And if I remember correctly, Baylor just really didn't look right from the jump in that game. And before that, their only wins in conference play were against all non-tournament teams besides a Texas Tech team on the bubble who they beat in early January. And low-key, this resume was sneaky thin. They had only won 20 games and were sitting in top 10 in KenPom without this great resume. But did that Baylor win solidify things? Absolutely. I think when you look at West Virginia, they have the depth, and that's always been a consistent checking point of Bob Huggins' rosters when West Virginia is good. He went 12 deep last season, and by the looks of this year's team, I think West Virginia has enough soldiers to keep fresh bodies on the court at all times. This also allows Bob Huggins to hedge against the foul trouble that's going to come when you play this kind of defense. Don't let last year's double-digit loss and 500 big record fool you. I think even though West Virginia had, a choppy backcourt and people had West Virginia as a team that was kind of fraud last year, West Virginia could be a little bit better this year. They have to shoot the ball a little better. They have to shoot, and that's from 3 and from the foul line. But their physicality and tenacity has them, for me, as one of the highest floors out of any team in the Big 12 and really in the country. Even if the offense is dragged down by guard play that isn't great, I think the fact that Bob Huggins is in the mix, the fact that Sheboy and Culver are in the mix, that really gives West Virginia a strength. It really gives West Virginia an identity, and I do think McBride and Kedrian Johnson do get better on the offensive side of the ball and really provide West Virginia with a really, really good top four of threats who could score the ball. And when you combine that with their toughness and Bob Huggins, that's a formula that I don't want to bet against. So I have West Virginia finishing in second place in the Big 12 for that reason, and I'm really looking forward to see what they could do.